Ike here. Today I'm drawing page 14 of First Sun and Sword. There's going to be a big establishing shot of the city, and that'll be fun to tackle. And I'll talk about my process and just reflecting on my growth as I get into it. There's the thumbnail. I'm looking at that on my phone, referencing that as I draw the final drawing that'll have some minor changes or sometimes a whole new camera angle. I tend to, in these videos, comment on my process drawing the pages, and I'll share other thoughts sometimes, like in some recent videos I've talked about my approach to perspective in drawing comics, and I actually recently recorded a video on drawing perspective in comics that's much shorter and like instructional in nature, and that's on Clever Kaiju's YouTube. I'll put a link here. And so I have Clever Kaiju that I'm a part of, and it is more instructional in nature, in the way that it's trying to support all visual artists, not just comic book artists. But even on my channel, I want to have videos that are more topical, not so much instruction, but topical and sharing my thoughts and ideas. I definitely want to do some videos that are me drawing figures like a sketch, or think of like a commission style sketch. And I'd like to draw those and kind of talk about my approach to that, my process on that, or share, just ideas for the week. That's something I hope to incorporate. But for now, I'm just getting started, and this is working to just do this video each week. But I'm not sure when I will start doing just like a discussion type video. So in the meantime, these videos are a place where I can just provide that sort of podcast discussion on topics. Some people might just be listening to this, not even able to see it. I know I'm guilty of that. When I watch YouTube, I tend to not actually look at it. And so they may get something out of just hearing my thoughts and process on being a comic artist, how I approach things and stay with it. And rather than looking at the actual drawing I'm doing. So I guess I've been thinking about community, and just like the approach of, trying to be a comic artist. And so like so many artists like myself, you're alone when you're drawing, and you spend a lot of time alone. And it can look like you're just, when you share it with people like I am here on my YouTube, it can look like this is just springing out of your imagination and out of your own creativity and like vitality that just keeps you going. You're just running on your own energy. But I have a family and a life and artist friends that support me and that I can learn from. And that is, there's a whole lot going on behind the scenes that isn't seen here. And I'm really grateful for those things, and I just kind of wanted to mention that here, like the community and questions, like having a life, living your life, and having community and connections. Those things are really important. And to develop oneself as an artist, to me, is to develop oneself. That you can't really separate the two. That sure, you could master like a technique and you could repeat that technique. I mean, there's certain levels of skill you could get, but for me, the path of being an artist is one of self-discovery and a dance between inner dialogue and outer dialogue and so on. So it's a discovery process that you're engaged in. And that's what makes it interesting and exciting. And so to be able to draw, this page I'm doing here, for instance, and allow yourself to just freely draw, just express what's in your imagination. You're applying some skills, but you're not a robot applying these skills. And to allow yourself to do that and know that you're making mistakes, that it's not perfect, that it's flawed, so flawed in my case. I mean, I don't even have a proper perspective grid on this panel, like to keep things in line. But to engage in that and express yourself in that way and see those flaws coming out, but not react, not feel critical on yourself. To be drawing like a cape and you're drawing the folds in it and it's like flowing. I mean, that's just one little example. To be able to draw that and it is you expressing, like you have this feeling of the fabric and of the movement of it. And you're scribbling it out. You're letting your pencil find it, and bring it out. To do that is to listen to your own inner voice, to trust it, and to not filter it or hinder it or be self-critical. And it is really hard. I think for artists, especially these days, there's so much talent out there, and so much being shared online, that it is hard to feel confident, and to allow yourself to go on your own journey and not just mimic and jump onto someone else's path. And there's a lot of people out there that are sharing their path. I mean, that's what I'm doing. And that's also why I do it the way I'm doing it. I don't want to just tell people, here's how I do it. Like, do it this way. That's not what I want to do here at all. I want to be able to say, like, here's how I do it and why I do it. Like, this is the process for me, and what are those like higher, more important things about that process that you could glean and apply to yourself to be your own unique artist. I was just thinking, some of the first comic pages I ever drew, I didn't really know what I was doing. And it was in the comic The Gray Judge, and that's on a webcomic. You can get to that from my website, Ike Comics, if you want to see it. But the first few pages look different than like 10 pages in. It starts to change. But in some ways, those pages were better than the later ones, because they were raw. Like you could see someone really drew it. It was expressive. The figures and the acting was expressive, even though it wasn't accurate. And some of you might relate to this. I mean, I've had portfolio reviews and had professionals look at my comics and give me feedback in the past. And a common piece of feedback is work on your anatomy. Like you got the storytelling down, you got such and you got the skills in the storytelling and all that down, but and the colors are good. Work on the anatomy. And it's like, yeah, I know that's like, but there was always like some resistance in me to that. And as time goes on, the more certain I am that it's actually a good resistance to have. That they're not wrong in their advice, but it is not how you get there is not to like accept that advice. Because my anatomy keeps improving, and I do keep learning anatomy. But what they're responding to is a standard of draftsmanship of anatomy of the human figures and faces and so on, a standard that they have in themselves. And they might be right. That might be a standard that you'll have to meet to really, make money in the industry. There may be sort of an implicit standard there, but on some level, it's their own standard that blocks them from really enjoying the comic, from being able to, for being able to just see the storytelling, see the expressive acting, and enjoy the story. And there's going to be other people that are able to enjoy it because they're not blocked by their own standard and they're from enjoying it. And when you try to improve on that anatomy to meet the standards of the industry or people like that, there is, you may be able to imagine it, but there's artwork that in comic books where you can tell that someone there's that feeling of I'll put it that way, there's the feeling of someone striving, that they're sort of reaching a little beyond their grasp. And so when you see like a master gymnast perform a move and it's like, wow, that was really impressive, like part of that is they make it look effortless. But when you see all the effort in it, there's something false in it that you feel you're seeing, and that can really pull you out of it. And so, like those very first comic pages I drew, they were naive, but there was no falsehood in them. There was no overreaching and trying. And then when I learned some more tips and techniques and maybe tried harder in different moments, may have actually gotten worse because I'm applying tricks that are a little rigid. They're going to be limited in how expressive they can be, and they can be, less expressive, capture less of the voice of the person, the doing the art and story. And then in other ways, there's that striving where it's trying to hit a mark and missing, or it's hitting it, but the way it's hitting it just looks so rigid, so striving. And so like the advice, back to that advice, the advice to improve your anatomy could be taken as be much more striving on your pages, and that would not make a better book. And so that was the resistance in me, I believe. So I always insisted on not giving into that, but continuing to trust my process of development. It might be slower than others. Some people might take that advice and go, "Yeah, I'm going to spend 1 year and just like get really good at anatomy and then surpass my skill in that area for sure." That's possible. Um, but my approach of working on storytelling, expressing myself, and all that, and anatomy all at the same time, and not losing sight of the important side of it to me, is going to pay off. Like I believe that, because uh, what's the alternative? I become a different sort of artist. But you gotta trust yourself in your journey and become the artist that you are gonna be. Like, become yourself. Um, there's really no alternative. So it can seem stubborn, I guess, to be like that, but it's not really. It's just an understanding of what it is to be an artist in this personal development. I I don't think I've mentioned it on here before, but I am a therapist by day. Been doing that like 10 years. First as a school counselor, and now in my own practice. That has been a really helpful experience for me, because this my understanding of developing yourself, and what developing as an artist is, has been informed by that, and by doing therapy with people, I really get to uh, experience life with them, um, keep myself in check, and like each week, each day that I got to do therapy, it doesn't matter, I just have to deal with my negative emotions, my issues in my life. I gotta stay healthy, and I just have to face reality. I gotta face it every week. There's no escape from that, and that's been really good for me. And so by that process, you get better and better at facing reality. Um, but just that's my journey. Of course, there's other journeys out there, but that's been mine. And it affects the way I think and approach my art, and the way I talk on these videos about what I'm doing. Um, but yeah, here I am, kind of at the start of 2023, and I've got a whole year ahead of me to set myself on a certain path, to engage in the certain relationships I have, and opportunities, and how I have the options of how I engage in those relationships, and in these projects like this comic, and if I pay attention and I stay honest, I find that I always grow. So I'm gonna do my best to trust this process this year. I'm going to get better. What you see here in these pages, the style of the art and the quality, you'll hopefully see a difference at the end of this year. You'll see an improvement. I'm not afraid to let it change. I need to let the art change, and that's something I've always done. Let the art change, even in the middle of a project, because I can't do the alternative. I can't mimic. I can't sacrifice my development in this process I'm in. So these pencils are sped up a little bit, not too much. And this whole video so far has been just this one image. It is at least, I think it's at least half the comic page. It's a very large image. It has lots of details going into it. So it makes sense that it took me quite a while. And then there's just two more panels here. This one is there's a new character that's hinted at here, this foreboding figure that's like a spy that is watching them. So now the stakes are raised, the tension's building. We know something is building here. As I sketched it out here, I actually had the boat moving from right to left, and that was an intentional choice. I was aware that I was changing directions when I put that in the thumbnail, and I felt like it worked in the thumbnail, but I changed my mind as I was drawing the page, and I wanted to move that to a left to right. So I basically flipped that plan in a mirror image. That means that the character they're up at a higher position, looking down, watching our main characters. Well, there was nowhere they could be positioned on that side of my drawing of the city that would have them above at that angle. So I actually have to go back here in a second to the previous drawing and add a new like column and arch where she could be kneeling to have a view of them. Yeah, here it is. So I put this arch there, and now I'm gonna turn it into like a whole box of arches that are open above, and put her on top. And it's not important to me that you can make out that that's an important figure on top of there. Not at all. But she needs to at least be there. If someone were to look back at it and be like, huh, where's this figure coming from? They can go, oh, okay, it makes sense. Going by feeling, and which actually got me a little off here. Once I started sketching in the figure there beyond that panel border, always remember you can draw outside the panel borders. But as I drew that in, I was like, ooh, that leg and that foot's too big. That's going to have her head hitting the boat, and I don't want them to overlap at all. I want to separate those. So I had to redraw her a little smaller here. I don't even really have a design for this character, so I'm just kind of making this up, going with it. And that's okay sometimes for me. There's a choice of how much work should go into the world building, and for me, I don't like to fully plan everything that goes into the world. And sometimes I make the panel borders in ink before I pencil, but this time I didn't because I wasn't sure. As I drew these more complicated drawings, I wanted to have that leeway to move the edge of the panels a little bit, if I wanted to. So that's why I didn't ink those yet, which worked out. I mean, I actually didn't really move them much. I think the top drawing, I ended up lowering its panel border down just a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Working on my process. Yeah, I guess thinking about some of the things I've said in this video so far has me thinking of these points, that someone that's newer, they might want advice on how to develop their art. Um, and like for me, back to those points I was making, it is important that you are on your own journey. So if you can find friends that are artists as well, that will be honest with you, but not negative, not controlling, because they need to understand it's your own journey too. And so sometimes that's finding peers. So like when you're new, it's always it's exciting to meet established professionals, or to find a mentor, and that can be helpful, I think. I never really had a clear, strong, and constantly involved mentor. I've had people that have functioned in that role briefly, and I tend to think that that's all you need. Is like every now and then a boost or a check-in from a mentor is helpful, but if you're with people that are way ahead of you, you tend to lose your autonomy. You can be jealous. You could feel less, like more inadequate and stuff, and it's just not the same as having peers. So having friends that are more peers in their art skill, where you can learn and develop alongside each other and push each other. Even if you don't actively try to push each other, you sort of are encouraging and competing with each other and sharing, your ideas and so on. That is really valuable, and you should try to find it. You can find a lot online now too. It doesn't even have to be in person. So friends and peers can really help. It doesn't hurt to have a mentor check in every now and then that you're on the right path, or answer those questions that are just well out of your reach that come up, like when it comes to the business of things, how to price your stuff or whatever. Yeah, so the community is important, and the peers that can you can grow with, and then maintaining that focus on it being your journey. I guess that could apply with like when it comes to like how many resources are out there now to learn how to draw comics. There are so many resources now, and I know the feeling. For me, others might relate. There can be a way that you can be kind of obsessive or perfectionistic about always trying to improve and learn and just right. But there is something to be said for developing your own tools, developing a small repertoire that's more refined, really skilled and strong in one area, instead of just having just a ton of knowledge that hasn't really been applied, hasn't really been processed in yourself. Just like, it's hot air, bloated hot air, amalgamation of this creature that's just all this stuff mixed together. And that, I feel like that's a recipe for self-doubt and a lot of negative things that could really throw you off of a healthy development. So what I'm trying to say there is like, don't be afraid to be naive and not know everything, but still be making attempts at it. And don't give in to thinking you have to study everything before you can do anything. because like the idea, you are what you eat. Well, you are what you do. And if what you do is just learn a bunch of knowledge, then you're not. I mean, that's what you're becoming. And if what you do is just draw in your own way and ignore a lot of other information and opinions, like, you'll get really good in that way. And it's fine, whatever way you choose. Just I would encourage people to develop in the way that's right for them. That's coming from a place of accepting yourself, trusting yourself, and allowing your own development. Same applies to the business side of being a comic artist. I mean, there's a lot of pressure to opinions out there of how you should value your own work, what sort of prices you should set, how you should present it or not. That you should go to comic conventions, that you should print it in such a way that like fits kind of current comic market. But I mean, the same goes for that. You should not be afraid to do it however you want to do it. I need to do a video on this topic. I gave a talk at a convention on this very thing, and I liked some of the points I made. I think it would make a good video. It definitely puts a stake in the ground of here's what I value, here's how I suggest it should be. I think that's always fun and creates debate. But maybe sometime I'll find those notes and make a video to share that. But just for these purposes here, you don't have to go to comic conventions. You can give away your comics. You can make web comics. You can print them in black and white. You can print them in a smaller format, or only in like trades, or not print them at all. Like, you can go to comic conventions or not. Like, there's so many different ways that you can do it, and you shouldn't be afraid to be, again, naive, to experiment with these different ways. Maybe you'll come up with something new. Like, it's not like there's a ton of money in comics, and that the industry's so strong and there's so much money in it that you would be foolish not to just fall in line with what the rules are. It's not like that. Like, you are free to do whatever you want and to experiment, and more than ever, we can share our work. There's so many possibilities now, even though the industry isn't so strong, and there's not so much money to be made in it. There's an incredible amount of opportunity. But for these purposes, when you think about your development, you don't have to go to conventions. Like, you can if you want to. Like, figure that out for yourself. What's important, and don't be afraid to experiment. Yeah, making a few corrections on this page here. The white out and the ink to clean it up, and there's the finished page. I'm pretty content with it. I would like to get even simpler and put a little less detail in, but I'm pretty happy with how that page turned out. And that's it for this week. So you have a good week. Practice being yourself and practice your art. And I'll see you next week.